Good morning, Trevor. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another session of You Don't Know What You Don't Know. How are you this morning, Trevor?
Good morning, Roland. I'm excellent after my half-day long weekend after Queensland. It seems funny that Queensland is the Queen's land and it doesn't have the Queen's birthday off, so it's
a very good point.
Strange. Nor do they have daylight savings.
I never thought about it like that before. Okay, Trevor, so people coming back from a long weekend this weekend, and we've got quite an important thing to talk about today. What we're going to be chatting about today, Trevor, is, again, we're sticking on our subject of security. This morning we've got identity and access management coming up, so looking at how you authenticate yourself. Are there more secure ways of authenticating yourself? How secure is your device? But importantly today we're going to be looking at ransomware, malware, phishing attacks, and in particular in phishing attacks I'm going to be talking a little bit about whaling attacks this morning. So it's something some of you may be familiar with. If you're not familiar with the terminology, you'll be familiar with the experience of being under attack from a whaling or a phishing attack. So the reason why we're talking about this at the moment, guys, it's quite topical because of the number of attacks that have been going on in our customer sites. People have been trying to breach the security of our customers, but more timely in the news we've recently heard around the Panama Papers, and that was the result of a phishing attack. We've also got some stuff around Project Wickenby, which was that's a bit more dated now, Trevor, isn't it? That's lost devices or lost laptops and like personal anecdotes.
Interesting point. It's about the device.
Yeah, the Project Wickenby is definitely about the device, but personal anecdotes. I mean, there's been an unprecedented number of ransomware attacks in Australia, and Trevor's been the target of
yesterday. It was
phishing
amazing.
Attacks. Yeah, and you got
just yesterday. I've had examples. One was one of our clients. I got an email from him saying he wanted to share a Dropbox file with me, and I know that he doesn't use Dropbox. Well, I don't. And so I sent him an email saying, "Is this what you're supposed to be sending this out?" Next minute, I get an email from him to all of his contacts saying, "Please don't open it. I've been hacked." So he must have been using Dropbox to send a few things off to somebody, and it's hacked it through. But I assume the process would be, if you click on it, it says enter in
your credentials,
and therefore, yeah. So that was an interesting one, and then
exactly. All right. So what Trevor's highlighting there, again, is with more freedom comes more security risk. And IT, as an IT professional, the way I think about looking after your environment is very much a balance between security and enablement. Okay, so let's have a quick run through about the different types of hacks. Trevor was generally using the terminology a hack, but let's look at ransomware, phishing attacks, and malware. So ransomware is something that we've seen happening a lot in Australia, particularly around the small businesses, and these involve often some type of social engineering or Trojan horse style attack. In other words, something disguised as something else. Okay, so what will happen in a ransomware attack, for example, you'll be given a link to click on or to download some software. That software could be disguised as a legitimate piece of software, but what it'll really do when it gets onto your machine, it will encrypt your local machine. Okay? All right, somebody's struggling with sound there a little bit. It'll encrypt your local machine, almost like last week we were talking about BitLocker encrypting your machine with a key that only you know to decrypt it. This is encrypting your machine, but with a key that somebody else knows. So then you are held ransom to you're held ransom to the people that own this key. Now the going rate in Australia seems to be about $300 to unlock your hard disk drive. So what it does is it locks and encrypts your hard disk drive. Then you'll be given some PayPal thing where you've got to pay $300. As Trevor so rightly said, the way we defend ourselves against this type of attack is have our data in the cloud or have a backup of our data somewhere else. Okay, again, backups of your data. We might say, well, I got a backup, so I'm safe. Where are your backups? Who's got access to your backups? I walk around offices, I see USB disks lying around all over the shop. There's no sort of process or control around those. So you're so concerned about your server, but then you make a copy of your server onto a USB disk and chuck it in your bottom drawer.
Mm-hmm. Or one of the things that I had ages ago was a backup onto a tape drive, which was totally useless because all of the applications had to be reloaded on, everything else had to be done. So it was, the cost and the time to repair that was huge. Even though I'm thinking, oh, it's all right, I've got tape backups of everything. It's just the hard data, nothing else. So it was an absolute, it does take a lot of time out.
So his sound seems to have gone really crazy there. Let's talk a little bit about phishing attacks now, guys. So phishing attacks and whaling attacks are one of a similar sort of thing, except a whaling attack is a more targeted phishing attack. So a phishing attack is generally an email that is phishing for your information. You can see where the name comes from. So they'll send you an email that looks very legitimate. The email will then ask you to click on a link to confirm your passwords or credentials or something. At that point in time, it'll capture your passwords or credentials to use again at a later stage. Okay, 10, 15 years ago, it was very popular for us to get emails from different African countries saying there was a prince in Nigeria or something and he needed your bank account details. So these were the early days of phishing attacks. What we're seeing today with phishing attacks are in particular the whaling attacks, which are aimed at the big fish in the company. Okay, so the CFOs, the CEOs, and those emails look really quite legitimate, and it looks like somebody's actually emailing you to ask for a wire transfer, like Trevor was saying, from AGL, from PayPal, some type of wire transfer account. So generally somebody in the organization who's got permissions to actually do the wire transfer. All right, phishing and whaling attacks are massive at the moment. All right, so the other thing we get is malware attacks. Okay, and malware attacks are normally, if you on a website, this is a lot where we get a lot of malware things from at the moment. Okay, so you go to a particular website and software is installed on your machine from that website via clicking on a link or any of these dodgy links to click on. I wonder what will happen if I click here. Not a very good idea to do on the internet. It's just not wise to go and experiment like that on the internet. So you need to be aware of these. There's a link down at the bottom from the Australian government regarding how to protect yourself against some of these different types of attacks. But our top security tips, right? Most of these viruses and security breaches occur because of people not being aware that by clicking that link they could be vulnerable. So a lot of it's got to do with education. It's got to do with empowering your people to be able to protect themselves. So firstly, don't open emails from people that you don't know. If you don't know the person and an email arrives, don't open it. If you do look at the email, look at the email address. If it looks really dodgy in the name of the email address, don't open it. If it looks dodgy, chances are it is dodgy. If they don't click on links and emails that don't look or feel right. Okay, avoid pirated software. We are quite big fans of, in general, people are quite big fans of downloading or sharing applications or software that they get their hands on. This stuff, it can easily be embedded with Trojans, which means they can install a secondary application onto your machine, one that you are not expecting to have there. Check your security settings in your browser. Most people go around trying to lower their security settings. Okay, I would go the other way. I'd say try and increase your security settings and browse wisely. Never, if you're interested in downloading some software that could be dodgy. I'm not in any way, shape, or form encouraging this, but if you do, like a while ago, I had to break into a email folder for one of my customers. So I had to download some hacking software to break into a what I'm going to call is a PST, an encrypted PST file for one of my customers. I did not use my work machine to download that software. I used a secondary machine to download that software and actually did it on a secondary machine, not my primary work machine that I do all of my work stuff and my online banking and all of that. I used a secondary machine for that. So back up regularly and store your data in the cloud. Okay. So we just got a question in there. With OneDrive, wouldn't the encryption just sync to the cloud? So this is in relation to backing up in the cloud. Okay. So it'll sync the entire site, okay? However, this won't result in the entire OneDrive for Business becoming encrypted, okay? And from my understanding, the encryption happens at like a disk level on the local machine. So storing stuff in the cloud is going to protect you from that. Keep anti-malware and antivirus software up to date. Guys, even if you just use Windows Defender, I've used Windows Defender for years as an anti-malware, antivirus software, and it served me quite adequately, I do believe. But if you don't keep it up to date, you might as well not install it. Let's make a deal. We'll make a deal here, you and I, okay? If you're not going to keep your antivirus software up to date, just uninstall it, okay? And I'm not suggesting you uninstall it. What I'm saying to you is if you don't bother keeping it up to date, it's not worth installing it at all. These signature files, there's an ongoing battle between the people who are hacking the machines and the people who are protecting the machines. You would call white and black hat hackers, and it's an ongoing war between these two. So unless you keep arming yourself with the latest defenses from the white hat hackers, which is the anti-malware, antivirus, and applying the latest patches, you're not going to be able to defend yourself. All right. So one of the other things that we've been asked a lot about, Tristan's got a few calls on the support desk regards two-factor authentication. So these phishing attacks go around a way of finding your username and password. If that gets compromised, how do you still protect yourself, okay? So the way you protect yourself is a thing called two-factor authentication. So two-factor authentication is often something you have and something you know. In other words, your telephone and your password. Or if you guys ever use those RSA tokens that are a 6-digit PIN plus your 4-digit secure PIN. You see what they do in there? I've got something I have, my little RSA token, plus something I know, my little 4-digit security pin in my head. So I've got to combine the two of those. Guys, when we look at things like biometric scanning, fingerprint scanning, retina scanning, stuff like that, it's all a similar sort of principle in that you have an eyeball to be able to do a retina scan, and you normally type in some type of password or passcode that goes along with that. So this is dual factor authentication. So really what we're trying to do here is prevent unauthorized access. So authorization is the key here. You are who you say you are. How do I know that? You are who you say you are because you gave me a username and password that I was expecting. That's how I know you are who you say you are. In the case of dual factor authentication, you gave me the username and password and you had the right eyeball, or you had the right telephone, or you had the right RSA token. Okay, this has been used for many years, and what we see now is people starting to turn this type of feature and function on in the cloud for different bits of data or intellectual property in their organization. Zero's gone that way. A lot of you guys, a lot of our customers, also Zero customers, and they've gone that way. Just as an additional layer of authentication, people may say, "Well, I get a little bit frustrated with having to authenticate on my phone as well as type in my username and password." I understand that, and I empathize with you, and I understand that it is a pain. However, it's just an additional layer of security. We're just trying to protect you, we're trying to protect your job, and we're trying to protect your identification on the net. This session really is just about your identification on the net. All those phishing attacks, what do they want? They want your identification. That's what they want. You click on that link, that malware. What do I want? I want your identification. I want your residual self-image, as you refer to it in the Matrix, on the internet. But what we really would like here is one user with one identity everywhere. So, when we look at people doing things like writing down passwords, or putting passwords in a little book or on post-it notes or in the top drawer, on a screen or something, it's often because they've got to remember multiple passwords. As soon as people have to remember multiple passwords, we increase the difficulty of them using the system. So what is ideal here, and what I like about this, and you combine this with dual factor authentication or two-factor authentication, what I like about this is we've got this single identity which authenticates you against Office 365. That identity can then be used to authenticate you against other software as a service things. Like you might say, well, I want to authenticate against Salesforce. Fantastic. Here we go. I also want to authenticate against Twitter. Yep, we can do that. I want to authenticate against this software as a service, this software as a service. So there may be multiple software services that you want to authenticate against, and you can actually use Office 365 and your two-factor authentication to then authenticate against all of these different systems right across the cloud. So it's hard to keep yourself safe, but like I said, it's this race. It's almost like an arms race between the different IT security personnel, and what we're trying to do is keep you secure, and one of the ways we're going to keep you secure is through single sign-on and dual factor authentication.
And I think what it is that previously we had our server in our office, we had those sort of things, and we couldn't afford to have that sort of backup and security and those sort of things that now and authentication through there. So we can't afford that ourselves normally, but
yep,
when we're
now through the economies of scale in the cloud,
through SaaS, but again we get to leverage on those things.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep. All right. Yep. So, but through the economies of scale in the cloud, which means because I'm doing it for another 400,000 people, it's only going to cost me a couple of bucks to do it for you. But Trevor's right in what you're saying. Okay, that you need. You need these security features on a small, an SMP, a small medium practice. An SMP would need these type of security features, but sometimes it's cost prohibitive to be able to implement them. So when we turn on the cloud, all of a sudden these options become available for us. So there's good and there's bad things that are happening with the cloud. The bad things are that we now need to switch our focus from this simple managing our network and our network security to a more people-centric compliance. In other words, my people in my organization and every one of their devices, not the people and their devices, all have to be compliant and security. So that is around implementing the right technology, as well as implementing the right education. Okay, so for example, you check this guy sitting in his car outside a customer site here. That tablet, that iPad has got now access to all of his corporate data because it's sitting in the cloud. How secure is that device? How secure is that user's authentication, their credentials? I see people chuckle at me when they see that I've got like a 7-digit PIN on my phone. And I see other people have got 4-digit pins, and I look at people unlock their phone and they go 1 2 3 4 1 1 1 1 1, and I'm thinking to myself, that is, if that phone's got any type of corporate information on, or access to any corporate information, you have just set the bar very low for your security. And the guys who are breaking into your networks are smart guys. They're trying to break into your device, they're trying to break into your network. If you're taking your device out of the network and not securing those individual devices and that individual user identity, you really are taking a massive risk with your personal intellectual property as well as your organization's intellectual property. Okay? Okay. So, yeah, there's a classic there. Brian saying Zuckerberg is a classic this week. Da, da, da. password for all of his accounts. So, that's a classic thing. I wouldn't even go passwords. I'm loving some of the feedback we're getting here. What I'm a big fan of is pass phrases. So I would tend to use, I feel happy, for example, as a password instead of something like I think that the first one is a much better password, or alternatively use something in a different language. Okay. Again, the more secure you make it,
our newest member of Missile
difficult.
3.
The more secure you make it, the more difficult it can be. Okay. So, any other questions this week? Tristan, you got anything else? Trevor, you got anything else? Okay. I am unhappy that Roland suggested that password. That's fantastic. All right, you see the way Tristan put his password in there? That's very good. Like the way he put his password, I like that very much. This kind of stuff is excellent, and that's an excellent example. Thanks, TD. That's great. No, just don't get too clever and lock yourselves out like I do sometimes, okay? Sorry, I do. I come up with these very complex, high secure passwords, Trevor, and I lock myself out. It's not funny. And then I got to go back and do a password reset. And Tristan and the guys don't want 100 requests today for password resets. He will be very unhappy with me. So if you do your password resets, guys, you got to make sure you do them tomorrow. All right. So
Tomorrow,
guys,
why tomorrow, Roland?
Oh, because that doesn't seem like they were all done because of me today. So otherwise, Tristan's going to get 100 requests to reset passwords today. So next week, guys, what have we got coming up? We've got some mobile device and app managed. So last week was securing your data. This week is securing you. Next week is securing your device. So we're going to look at how to secure your device in the case that it gets lost. And then you're thinking, well, if somebody gets access to my password, they're going to have access to this, my bank account, my internal SharePoint site, all of this following intellectual property, okay? So next week we're going to look at securing your device. We're also going to look at how you can deploy applications across your devices.
Or if I'm a lawyer. Yep.
And we're also going to look at how to do remote wipes on a device. So if a device gets lost, how do I clear out my corporate or my organizational information that could be sitting on a personal iPad that's in the back of a cab, left on a plane, somewhere in the world that you may never see it again. And remember, one of the tenets of security is once someone has physical access to your device, it is no longer your device. All right. So, guys, thank you very much. Unless there's anything else, I'm going to wrap it up for this week. And next week, we will be talking security again. I know it's not the most exciting thing on the planet, but I want you guys, especially the business decision makers in each of these organizations, to be thinking about security in the back of your head. Think about what can I do about security. And you want to know why? Because the hackers are thinking about what they can do about your security. So, guys, have a great week. Thank you very much, Jacinta, Brian, Tristan. Thank you very much. Guru, thank you for your great questions, and I'll talk to you next week. Cheers, guys. Thanks, Trevor.